Welcome back to Heard Tell. She's a favorite. I know this because you people keep asking me when she's coming back. Here she be, Sarah Stook from over in jolly old England, which is mostly rainy and dreary England
That's
because
very true.
the east coast of England in the wintertime, you may have heard it rains once in a while. How are you doing with the rain? Is all well with you?
Well, I'm going to go out and get a chippy later, so I'm hoping it doesn't rain when I'm going to get that chippy.
Chippy?
Fish
Now,
and chips.
I know what that is, but you got to tell everybody else what it is.
Fish and chips.
All right. I also like where you do the sandwich where you just put the French fries on the white bread and fold it over. That one's always fun too.
Culinary geniuses we are. Screw the French, the British do the real food.
You know, English food gets a bad rap, but you know what it is because they compare it to, like, we think of French food as fancy. If you think of English food as like comfort food or soul food or country cooking, it's all fine. It all matches up fine. That's the trick to it. But
Exactly.
look, I've been to England. I like the food. The food was fine. I will take up for your food. Anyway, you do what you always do and you poke fun at us. You did a whole series on presidential runners-up. I got a kick out of this because I love history. It gives us a little bit of perspective on the present and where we're going in the future. What lesson do you take from presidential runners-up? Because it's really interesting who hasn't become president and who's lost when you go to look at these lists.
I mean, sometimes it's an absolute landslide, and then sometimes it's extremely close. If you look at, Samuel Tilden versus Rutherford B. Hayes, they had to throw it to the House and they throw it to the courts, and people have to decide who aren't, the voters because it's that close. And you get, people who are really experienced who fail, or sort of newcomers, or someone like Brian who ran 3 times and just never won.
What one's poked out at you? This is a multi-part series like usual over on Elections Daily. We'll link to it like we always do. But what stuck out with you? I know you mentioned that, the post-Civil War runners-up, there was a lot of Democrats. They had like a streak of them there for a while. There's some really big names in history, like you just mentioned, that are runners-up. What really stuck out to you, though, when you did this whole series?
Well, I think this sort of no guarantees of success, as it were, especially when you're running against a popular incumbent. If you look at 1984, I've still got quite a few to write, but 1984, Mondale versus Reagan. Reagan won 49 states. He was 3,000 out of winning Minnesota. That wouldn't happen today because, you've got states that are so partisan, it's untrue. Yeah, Mondale didn't stand a chance. Like, he tried to do the gimmick, he tried to get the female candidate vice president. No guarantee. But I suppose back then vice presidents you didn't really think about your running mate. Whereas nowadays, when we get to John McCain, Sarah Palin definitely took votes from that camp because everyone thought, well, if he dies, she's president. And yeah.
I'm not sure that's Geraldine Ferraro's fault, just to be fair to Geraldine Ferraro, but no, I take your point. It's interesting, though, because you're from England. So in the parliamentary system, that sort of thing never happens because it's basically next person up. And with very few exceptions, which, like this past year where you keep going through leaders, you pretty much know who the next person's going to be pretty well in advance. It is a unique part of the American system because of the primary system. Because of things like this, you do get that candidate that everybody can just go, oh, they've got no chance whatsoever. And more times than not, no chance is exactly what happens.
But I mean, Donald Trump, nobody thought he would win. Even when I first watched his announcement in 2015, I thought, he's probably not going to get far. And then he won. And then he won the presidency. Jimmy Carter had a 2% name recognition. Sometimes the people that you don't expect do the very best.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You also have, it's interesting since we're on the topic though, but we've had a couple presidents that didn't get it on their first tries. Nixon had to take a couple swings at it. George H.W. Bush ran against Reagan famously before he became president. Now, I know Trump's going to run again. That's kind of the outlier for the last 40 or 50 years, though. Usually it's one and done and folks are done. President Biden, he ran 3 times. Third time he finally won, although there was a big gap. Do you think the days of multiple shots of it are going to start coming back? Is that a cyclic thing? What do you think?
We've seen quite a lot of 2-termers in the past few years. You've seen Clinton, you've seen Bush Jr. and Obama. So, 3 in a row is quite impressive. We haven't really had the days of 1 terms for a while. So perhaps that's what's going to bring it back, because, Biden is unpopular as far as I'm aware. That's not to say he won't win next time, but it depends, how he conducts his campaign, and if it's Trump against him or DeSantis, who's clearly the Republican choice after he's made Florida a supermajority for the Republicans.
I wonder too, Sarah Stook joining us like she often does, when it comes to failed president, we have these huge primaries now where we had what, 16 people run in 2020. It's just insane how many people are running, but then they run these long shot campaigns where they're not going to win. They know they're not going to win, but then they end up getting a cabinet position, or they end up running for another office later, or they up their national profile. How do we figure that part of it in? Because the way campaign finance and fundraising goes now, running for president is kind of its own business model now. And that's different than in the 18th and 19th and early 20th centuries, where you cover these runners up where it's like, well, they failed and that was the end of their career. Now it's a business model. That's a whole different thing too, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Beto O'Rourke obviously ran for president. He's also lost the governorship of Texas race twice. Oh, well, he lost the Senate race as well, sorry. So, yeah, people also tried, like you said, there was 16 odds, and there was people that was never going to get through, like, sort of no-namers, as it were. And Pete Buttigieg has been, Joe Biden's been a senator longer than Pete Buttigieg's been alive, to put it in perspective. Like, somebody that young, you got to understand, is probably not. And, he was only really known for being, like, openly LGBT politician from a mayorship in a small sort of city.
Yeah. Would the mayor of Grimsby be considered for a prime minister? Like, would that work in?
We don't really have mayors. Mayors here is like mainly ceremonial. It's not like there's like someone like the mayor of London that actually has power. Mayor of Grimsby, couldn't tell you who it was. I have no idea who it is. It's
right. And London's its own thing because they have, their police force is separate from the rest of the country. London's its own beast in and of itself for folks that aren't super familiar with it. It really is kind of a city state inside of the UK. From a UK perspective, do you look at something like the way we do primaries and our presidents and the way we do our turnover, although you lapped us this past year, but that's outside the norm. Usually you guys have pretty good runs. Does it seem chaotic the way we do presidents and runners up in the primary system?
You guys take forever to count elections. I had to wait like 2-3 weeks to finish my prediction list to tick it all off, because California 22 took a very long time. It's like, geez, count. How is it taking 2.5 weeks? Are you guys, we do it overnight. You should see Sunderland. Follow Sunderland. They're always really quick with counting votes.
Well, for one thing, the UK is only like 60 million people, and we're 330 million. So,
but not every single one of them votes.
Right. This is fair, but there's things involved.
You should not take forever like that. It's embarrassing.
But not because here it is, and the criticism is because every state does it differently. Florida's done instantly almost now. 20 years ago, Florida was the worst, and they fixed their stuff, got together. Now they're the standard. Now Arizona's a trash fire when it comes to this stuff. So it's one of those things of our system where the states are individual. You have federal elections, but they're administered by the states, and it makes it a mess. All right, that's a fair criticism. All right, that's a fair criticism. Sarah Stook poking holes into the Democratic Republic greatness of America from the bastion of craziness of the UK, where you can't even keep a prime minister longer ahead of lettuce.
We have a stable monarchy.
I don't know if I call Charles stable, but okay. I got to ask you, because they're over here right now doing the tour, the Prince and Princess of Wales now, their new designation. They're over here touring America. It's been a couple of years since they did it. Is that a big thing now when a rural comes to America? I know the Harry and Meghan thing's kind of skewed this a little bit because they live here now full time. Does that still get coverage when they come over here? Is that a big deal in England at all?
Yeah, it's got coverage. I've seen it over the news. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Kate. I think she's so lovely and she's always very stylish and she's going to make a really fantastic queen. So, you know, she's always covered because I think people like her. She's pretty popular. You always see people saying how lovely she looks and how good a job she's doing because it's nice to see someone who's liked. So just ignore the politicians. It's nice to have a properly liked figure. You know, they've been received well apart from a few chants of USA when they were at a basketball game. However, unfortunately, your little nation can be quite
Did
rude.
you say basket goal?
Basketball.
You said basket goal.
I said basketball.
You said basket goal.
I didn't. Okay, but I said basketball.
It blew my mind though when you see them at like a basketball game or something. It's like America really does have an obsession over the English royal family. Like it's unarguable that we're just obsessed with these
people. You guys
people.
don't have it. You guys just have like your dynasties are like the Kennedys and the Bushes and whatever. We have like gone thousands of years old family who have ruled over us.
But you are a monarchist. You like that sort of thing. We don't like that sort of thing. We like it by proxy.
So the weddings and the funerals and that.
Right, but we don't have to own it. We're just borrowing it and getting entertained by it. We don't have to actually deal with them, fund them, or be, subjects to them.
They're very cheap, to be fair.
To be fair, too, since you're bringing the money up, Sarah Stook joining us, like the thing with the funeral for the queen and stuff, like it got brought up, like, well, this is expensive. Like, no, you don't understand the income. The royal family is probably the biggest tourist attraction in England. Is that fair? Like they bring in a ton of money to the country.
You guys have an inauguration every 4 years. We have a big wedding or a funeral once in a blue moon. The coronation will be a big one, sure, but Charles has said it's not going to be a humongous, expensive one.
I mean, seriously, what's the list of people that are alive that remember the last coronation? Like, that's not a real big list, right?
Exactly. I mean, my nana and my grandma probably do. My grandfather served at the Queen's father's funeral. He did pass away a few years ago, though. So yeah, not too many. It's like my parents were born way after, so it's really bizarre seeing a coronation. It's going to be very big and glitzy though, and I'm looking forward to it because I like pomp and ceremony as a Brit.
Well, just on the averages though, Charles is well into his 70s now, so you're probably going to get at least one or two more, unless something really scary happens.
Probably Will and Kate, and then George.
Sarah Stook, I always love talking to you. Let me ask you a fashion question real quick. We just had our first state dinner of the Biden administration. Emmanuel Macron of the France came over. How do you put into context, we call it nerd prom when we do stuff like this because all the journalists and they get a couple Hollywood stars and they get all pretend like they're all bigger stars than what they really are. And, White House Correspondents' Dinner, this kind of stuff.
Savage. I love it.
When you have political theater like that and it becomes a fashion event, you're a fashion person. Where does the political stuff like that rank when it comes to things like that?
You guys can just never do what we do. I'm sorry, we have the crown jewels, we have the tiaras and the diamonds that are older than your country. And at the same time, Jill Biden isn't really that fashionable. I don't think she can wear nice stuff, then she just pairs it with not very nice things. Whereas Melania Trump, I know it's very controversial, but I thought she had a really good taste in fashion. Same with Jackie Kennedy. Obviously, my love for Jackie Kennedy is unbound, as it were. And Caroline Kennedy met with William and Kate, I noticed.
I would have went with unbearable, but unbound works.
Yeah, so yeah, I saw Caroline Kennedy met with Will and Kate. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you guys, I think it's kind of different because with the royal family, there's a dress code and what they're not allowed to wear. Like, you're not allowed to wear certain coloured nail polish. So my little pink nails would not be acceptable today. So it's different. And yeah, there's more of it. I think there's probably more of a dress code, but yeah, I think you guys can do some nice events. You can, when they do the White House for Christmas, you can make it quite pretty. But it's a different kind of standard. I'd say that, it'd be a lot stricter over here.
Yeah,
Like,
we don't have the royal protocol where it's
no,
so cut and dry. Of course, some of this will probably change now that the queen died because she was a real stickler for details and stuff. She legendarily she would read through the protocols and stuff. And it's different because every White House is a little different. You know, the Obama White House had a different style than the Trump White House, which was just chaos, and then the Biden White House is going to be different than whoever comes next.
yeah,
Um, I always found the Melania stuff a little interesting because obviously, you know, Trump's such a lightning rod and it's going to be controversial, but it's like, you know, when you think about the role of the first lady, and I don't mean this derogatory at all, but Melania is a trained model. There's probably been very few people who aren't better equipped to be the first lady than Melania was. You know, do stylish things, make it look good, stand there, look pretty, present the country well. Like she's a trained model. This is exactly the skill set
and
you
I think
need
she
for the
has
modern first lady.
a very lovely sense of fashion, and I do believe
Yeah,
if she was a Democrat and not married to Trump, she'd be on the cover of fashion magazines like
I
Michelle.
believe that. 100%. I
She
believe
also
that.
looks very. I mean, she's got she's got the model figure. She's tall and she's very slim, so it works for her. But yeah, I think whatever you think of Trump, was whatever a very elegant, ladylike person, and I appreciated it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think she did anything really untoward or out of bounds or embarrassing anywhere in there. Sarah Stook. All right. We know we got part 4 of the runners up coming out soon. Let folks know what you got going on and what you have cooking over there in the UK. 5 hours ahead of us at any given time. So until we see you again, because you're a frequent contributor here on Heard Tell, let folks know what you got going on.
I'm continuing with my lad Sarah's on the consorts of England and Britain, a few of whom are my very distant ancestors, which is quite cool. I'll be continuing with my presidential runners-up. I'm hopefully going to be writing an article about the year 1979 and its effect on geopolitics. However, I am absolutely stumped on how to do it. So it will maybe appear, but it'll probably be after the new year.
I'm actually really excited about that one because you were telling me about it. All right, Sarah Stook, we'll let you get back to doing your busy, busy stuff. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.